who's with the TUC, an umbrella group for more than 50 trade unions in the UK, which represent a total of nearly 6.5 million people working in all sorts of sectors, from train drivers to teachers. Owen Tudor, thank you for talking to us today. Now, you are a great proponent of this Robin Hood tax, which is a tax on financial transactions that basically aims to take from the rich and give to the poor, as the name suggests. Why such strong support?
TUC's been a supporter of the Robin Hood tax campaign ever since it was started. In fact, we were one of the organisations that helped set it up. What we want to see is two things. Firstly, we're interested in a new stream of revenue from an under-taxed sector, and one that caused significant damage to the world economy, to fund global public goods, help us stop cuts in public services, help us tackle poverty at home and abroad, and tackle climate change. But also, the exciting thing about a financial transaction tax, or Robin Hood tax, is that it would actually be a game changer for the financial sector. It would make short-termism an awful lot more expensive than long-term investment, and therefore it would shift the financial sector away from being something that the rest of us service, and it would actually restore the old idea of the finance sector that its job was to support the real economy rather than the other way round. So in many ways, it achieves several objectives at once, and that's one of the reasons why we support it.
So this is basically a tax on large financial transactions. Is it retribution for the bankers?
It's not retribution, but it is about making sure that the finance sector that caused so much damage to the world economy actually puts something back, actually helps to restore the situation. Because over the last few years, we've actually seen an awful lot of people around the world suffering as a result of the actions of the finance sector, with the possible exception of the people at the very top of the finance sector who have gone back to business as usual and paying themselves huge bonuses. So a financial transaction tax would take a really small amount of money, 0.05% on average, sometimes lower than that, out of the sort of financial transactions that are going on all the time around the world in the finance sector, but which don't touch ordinary people at all. So this is trading in futures, in options, in derivatives, in currency speculation, and so on. And we would prefer to see the vast resources that are currently spinning round the global financial system actually used to invest in industry, creating jobs, and helping people buy homes.
The way you talk about it sounds like a no-brainer, but there are objections to it, aren't there? There are those who say it would be bad for business, driving trade elsewhere. In fact, when it was introduced in Sweden, something similar in the 1980s, a lot of trade moved to London.
The tax needs to be designed sensibly, and we've had a lot of people working on this for a number of years. We've managed to persuade the International Monetary Fund and the European Commission that this is a good idea and will work, and that wasn't an easy job. They weren't falling over themselves to support what we were suggesting. The Swedish example is an example of what happens if you design the tax badly. Britain actually already has a financial transaction tax. At the moment, it only covers shares, which is probably, of all of the bits of the financial markets, probably the least offensive bit, the one that causes least problems for the rest of the economy. But that tax has been in existence for about 300 odd years, and certainly hasn't stopped the City of London becoming the globe's main financial centre. That's designed in a way that makes it impossible to avoid, so that's the sort of design that we're looking for in the financial transaction tax. And the IMF found that 16 of the G20 economies around the world have some form of financial transaction tax. We want to extend it into the more recondite areas of the financial sector, which are the ones doing least good for the population as a whole.
Would it necessarily even be a tax on banks? What can you do to make sure that banks don't pass those fees along to their customers in the shape of reduced returns and higher fees for services?
The tax actually falls less on banks. I mean, we use banks as a catch-all expression to deal with the financial sector. It actually hits mostly hedge funds and boutique financial individuals, people doing high-frequency trading. These are people who are actually just doing stuff on their own account. So they haven't got ordinary customers. They've only got high-net-worth individuals, and they will lose out. I mean, one of the reasons there's been opposition to the tax is some people who are now very, very rich are going to be much less rich as a result of this, and they're not happy about it. But it won't actually have much impact at all on the ordinary people in the street. Now, some tax will fall on ordinary people, but the benefits that they'll receive as a result will far outweigh that. So the net contributors through the financial transaction tax are the very rich, who have benefited most from the last 20 years of economic growth around the world and haven't been putting it back into the economy, very often dodging tax in other areas as well, which they're supposed to pay. One of the advantages of the financial transaction tax is you can't evade it by hiding what you're doing. If you want to buy a financial product, you have to pay the tax, or you don't get the legal title that proves you own it.
If the rich are less rich, doesn't that then have an impact on people lower down the economic scale as well? In fact, people like the services sector, the very people whose jobs you're trying to protect.
The OECD, again, no huge friends of ours in loads of areas, have actually said that one of the problems with the world economy at the moment, and one of the things that led to the crash, one of the things that is holding back growth, is inequality between the very rich and ordinary people. And actually that's the way we describe it now. It's not even between the very rich and the very poor. Actually, what's happened is that the very poor, the poor and the ordinary working people have been left behind by the super rich, who have massively increased their income over the last 20 years. And that hasn't actually helped anybody. If you redistribute some of that wealth and create a more equal society, then actually, the OECD say, and we agree, that will actually boost economies and make it easier for people to invest, make it easier for jobs to be created and so on.
Moving on, back in September, your members voted to look into the practicalities of holding a general strike. So far, we've seen no general strike. Does that mean that you found that it was impractical?
No, we're still looking at the issue and seeking views from unions about it. I mean, I have to say, the vote that was taken at Congress is an expression of the huge concern that unions feel about what is going on in the economy, and that's something that's shared across Europe, across the world. What we're looking at is what is the most effective way that we can change government policy on where government is actually creating enormous amounts of damage, and unions are looking for what is the way to stop this happening.
And is striking the way?
Well, striking is something that trade unions do. The withdrawal of labour is a fundamental human right, and sometimes it's the most effective way to get a resolution to a problem. In almost every experience we have, it's not the first resort, it's the last resort that unions go for. If other things have failed, then sometimes we have to take strike action. Unions and union members, because they always get to vote on the issue, take that action reluctantly. It hits them directly, so it's not an easy decision to take. But they take that decision if they feel that's the only way to get the people they're bargaining with back to the negotiating table.
A general strike isn't unprecedented, but there hasn't been one in this country for 86 years. Is it important to you, and do you think you can carry the general public with you on this?
Well, I think our main issue is whether we can carry the general public on our commitment to creating a future that works and tackling the challenges of austerity. If we can carry them with us on that, then I hope that we will be able to convince the government to change course without recourse to anything more serious.
What's your alternative to austerity?
We want to see greater investment in jobs. We've got a position at the moment where, partly as a result of the global financial crisis, interest rates are at the lowest possible level. Now is the perfect time, actually, to borrow to invest. I mean, not as we're doing at the moment, actually, to increase borrowing so that we can pay people to lie idle on unemployment benefit. What we want to see is we want to see the government working with employers and with unions to identify things that can be done that would boost the economy, boost jobs, boost wages. Those sorts of things will include, for instance, house building. We've got an enormous housing problem in this country, as many countries have. What we ought to be doing is investing in those bricks and mortar partly because it improves people's quality of life, the people who can actually live in those houses, and partly because of the economic effects of rebuilding the economy. We want to see more investment in green jobs so that we can actually achieve growth without destroying the environment. We want to see more training so that people have higher level skills that can produce that growth that will actually feed back in terms of wages and jobs. Those are the sorts of things that we think ought to be done instead of what the current government is doing, which is slashing capital projects, slashing infrastructure projects, a few high-profile ones to get the headlines, but actually undermining the future of the economy in this country.
Surely any kind of strike or industrial action by workers would undermine the confidence of the very investors that we need to complete those kinds of projects.
That is undermining investor confidence at the moment is that they don't think people have got the money to buy the things that they might make. That's what is actually holding back the economy, not the actions of those people trying to protest about that. And we've seen huge protests, for instance, in Spain and Italy and Greece, and it's not those that are holding back investor confidence. It's the fact that people who are looking to invest don't think they'll be able to get a return because they don't think there's enough demand in the economy. What that means is we need people to be in jobs, in work, and earning money.
One of the things the government's done recently is to talk about halving the amount of time that companies need to consult before making large-scale redundancies to 45 days. How have you reacted to that?
We don't think this is the solution. Making it easier to get rid of people is not a way to create jobs. We're in favour of things that make it easier to create jobs and easier to invest so that you can produce jobs, but actually halving the amount of time that people have to get ready for unemployment and so on, or find solutions. I mean, that's one of the worst things about this. It actually means that it's easier to sack people than find a way not to sack them. And we think it would be better if the government concentrated on that rather than making it easier to make people unemployed.
But don't companies need to stay lithe and sort of ducking and diving, trimming where they need to in order to survive in this kind of climate and indeed to employ anyone at all?
The actual countries that survived the economic crisis best were the ones with the most regulated labour markets, with the most rights for working people. What we have in this economy is we already have one of the most flexible economies in the world, and it doesn't seem to have done us any long-term good in terms of creating jobs or making people more productive. This is the other side. As the sort of solutions that I'm talking about are, if you have to find solutions to the challenge of falling demand, you might actually go down the route of making your workforce more productive, getting more out of the capital that you're investing, rather than simply saying, oh, well, we can't do anything, let's just let people go and rot on the dole. That's no solution for the economy as a whole. And actually, I don't think it's a solution for any individual company either.
Owen Tudor, thank you very much.